G'day guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Alex, I'm a sports physiotherapist. Today we are talking about shin splints, a condition that I have treated for a very long time. It keeps popping up all the time on my newsfeed, people asking for how do I treat it, what's the best thing to do, and I'm just going to answer it in a really simple video, and we're going to do it in 4 parts. What is it? How does it present? How do I treat it? And how do I stop it from coming back? That's all you're here for, and that's all I'm here to give you. So I've worked in elite rugby union, I worked in rugby league, I've worked in elite basketball, I've worked with triathletes, I've been to the Commonwealth Games, I've seen this a lot, and the actual treatment for this is very simple. So let's dive straight into what is shin splints. Shin splints is a very generic, overarching term. It is not a specific diagnosis. All it means is that the athlete has come in and said, I have leg pain. I looked it up on the internet and it tells me that it was shin splints. So what shin splints tends to be when someone comes in is a condition that's called Medial Tibial Stress Syndrome, which refers to essentially pain on the tibia or on the bone. It is a bony pain condition. So the reason why this distinction is important is because how we treat bone and how we treat muscle and tendon is a lot different. So it's important that we make the distinction that what most people have when they say they have shin splints is they have bone pain. On the spectrum of bone pain, we have irritation down one end. We then start to get into stress response, and then we start to get into stress fracture. So it's important that we understand that we're on a continuum that has fractures in it because we need to start taking the pain seriously. So if you're someone that starts to get, you started to exercise, you've exercised a bit too quick, and then you've started to develop pain in your shin, what will tend to happen is you're fine exercising and then you got a little bit sore after. And then you were fine exercising, got a little bit harder to warm up, but then, you know, it went away and then I had my pain after. And then it's very hard to warm up. I get pain after and I've got pain leading up until the next time that I run. So I start to get pain all the time. So you go through this cycle of only pain after I run, pain sort of as I start to warm up, goes away, then after, and then you start to just get pain all the time, and then eventually it just won't warm up. And that's probably where a lot of you are today that are watching this video. So that's kind of how it presents and how it comes on. The reason why it comes on is that we've done too much too soon. There's been a training error, as in we've built up too much load, or we've done too much on the leg too quickly, or we haven't done that, but we've essentially just kept pouring on the volume of training. If you're a runner, or you're a rugby player, or you've played some sort of sport where you're running a lot, it might be that you've just introduced an extra training session, or we're now leading into competitions and we just haven't backed off in other areas. You're essentially just doing too much. And what are we doing too much of? We're doing too much impact with the ground. This impact with the ground is putting force into the bone. The bone is no longer able to remodel and repair itself as quickly as it could when you were training at a smaller amount, and this has now led to you having symptoms. So the person will come in and they'll say, I've got pain on my leg, it's sore when I touch here, it's sore up and down the bone. And what I'll do is I'll grab my thumb or my fingers and I'll run my hand down, pressing slowly until I start to get the pain, and then I'll mark it on the leg. I'll keep going down. Where do you get the pain? Where does it stop? Where does it stop? And then I'll mark out where it stops. And I'll measure that length of pain distribution. And that's some metric that I can use to keep in my mind about how much pain this person's got. I'll then get them to mark out where the pain is most sore, and I'll take a photo of that. So that's just a nice way for me to know actually how much distribution of pain is there, and then where the worst spot is, and then I'll get that person to rate that pain out of 10. If 0 is no pain and 10 is the worst pain imaginable. The second test that I'll do is I'll just get them to stand up, and I'll get them to hop onto that leg, and get them to rate that pain out of 10. Now, if they have quite a severe amount of pain with hopping onto that leg, then I know it's probably running is not a good idea if a single hop on that leg is quite sore, because running is essentially just a sequence of repeated hopping in a row. If there's not too much pain on the bone and they don't have any pain on hopping, I'll then get that person to jump up on a treadmill and we'll get them to start running, and I'll time until they start to get their symptoms, or I'll work out how far they can run before they get their symptoms. After that, I'll then work out how long it takes for their pain to settle after doing that amount of running, and that'll give me an idea as to how much running they should be doing, or if they shouldn't be doing any running at all. Obviously, if they just got pain with hopping on that leg, one single hop, and they got quite a bad pain, then I'm definitely not letting that person run. Or if the person was fine with that and they started running on the treadmill and they started getting pain after about 15 minutes, then I probably know that, and somewhere around about 10 minutes of running conservatively is going to be okay for that person, but they need to have recovered by the next time that they run. So by doing those couple simple tests, I have an idea about how that pain is behaving. But if that person was to run for 10 minutes and then it took them a day and a half, over 24 hours for that leg pain to settle, then I know that even that 10 minutes is too much. So that's kind of how shin splints presents. So we've now gone through, well, what is it? It's a bone pain. How does it present? It presents with impact, it presents with running, and it presents typically on the inside of my tibia as I press on it, as I hop on it, as I run on it. So how do I treat it now? So this is the part you're all here to watch. We need to start breaking this pain cycle, because what's happened is your pain and presentation has started to snowball, meaning that it's getting a bit worse, it's not actually getting better, and no amount of foam rolling, TENS machines, Theragun type things are gonna help. We need to reduce that bone pain, and massaging bone doesn't make bone get better. Rest makes bone better. So we need to reduce your load, because what's happening is at the moment, your capacity is being exceeded by the load you're putting on it. So your load is here, but your bone's capacity for exercise is here. We need your load to be below your bone's capacity, because if your load is more, then the bone can't recover, but if it's at a lower level, then your bone can recover because your load isn't exceeding your capacity. Now, bone does get stronger by slightly being above its capacity with enough rest, but at the moment that's where most people are not, and that is why they've got medial tibial stress syndrome. So the first step is we need to break the pain cycle. We need to stop the pain from happening, and we need to reduce volume. So if you were running around with your sport or just running in general, let's say 5 days a week, we might be able to get your symptoms under control by just reducing the number of days. We may not have to go cold turkey, but what we need to see is that you're recovering in between your runs, you don't have that constant level of pain, and that your pain is recovering within enough time. So for example, if you're a runner or if you play a field sport and you're training 3 nights a week, we might be able to get away with just reducing one of those days or removing one of those days from your training. And then as long as your pain starts to decrease, your symptoms are decreasing whilst maintaining 2 days worth of loading, then that is okay. You'll eventually trend better. We can do some things at the same time to strengthen up the leg to make it better, and then we can slowly reintroduce that 3rd day. In my experience, if someone's training 3 days a week, it would be better to just keep the load on 2 days and take an entire day away. However, I have done it with people in the past where we just reduce on each single day. The reason why I like the 2 days is that you get more days in a row of recovery before we start loading the bone again. So what I want to see with athletes is that we don't have a base level of constant pain whilst not doing anything. So as you're sitting there, you shouldn't have an ache in the leg. If you're at that point in time, then we know the symptoms are not great. I like when an athlete is able to warm up. It's a little bit stiff and sore when they warm up. They're able to exercise without pain once they're warm, and that when they're finished exercising, their pain lasts at least, at the very most, less than 24 hours. They're recovering within 24 hours. So if I exercise at 8 a.m. on Monday, by the time 8 a.m. Tuesday rolls around, I am no worse off from having exercised on the Monday. If that isn't the case, then we need to keep reducing. So they can be a bit sore, they can then warm up, there's no pain during the exercise, I mean no pain during the exercise, and then they recover. And then the warm-up gets easier and easier and easier, but always no pain during the actual exercise, because specific point tenderness over part of the bone can be a stress response and can be leading to a fracture. So we want to avoid anything to do with that. So that is the most important thing. We get your load management right. Once your load is right, once we know that you're running at a certain amount per week and that your body is tolerating that and your symptoms are trending improvement, then we've broken that pain cycle. The second most important thing with tibial stress syndrome or shin splints, which is to start improving your capacity. So we've just reduced the load and now we're starting to improve the capacity. Improving the capacity is strengthening up the muscles around your calf. So those are things like seated calf raises, standing calf raises. There is also some evidence that if we can improve your strength in the arch of your foot, which will also happen from doing seated calf raises, but there's other more specific foot exercises that you can do, this will also help, because the foot is the first thing that makes contact with the ground, and that's what's going to absorb some of the force. So we want strong calf muscles to reduce the amount of force that goes into the bone. After that, general lower leg strengthening is important and can help with shock absorption, so strong quads and strong glutes. Now, we're reducing some of your running load, so you'll definitely have time to get in 2 to 3 times a week and do some calf and leg strengthening. Now, foam rolling, icing, massaging, all that sort of stuff is in the 2% bucket off to the right. You can do that if you would like, but the majority of what is going to fix you is getting your load management right. It is getting your capacity, so getting your load right and improving your leg capacity. That is improving your strength. There is no point getting a massage. There is no point getting any of that TENS or massage guns or any of that sort of stuff until you fix this, because this is the 95% of your issue. Unless you get the load right and the capacity start to improve, you're not going to get rid of your symptoms. I don't care what anyone says. It's just not factual. We need to get that right for you to get your shin splints right. Once you get your load right, so it might only be 2 or 3 days of running per week, you know how much you're able to do. It's then a maths equation as to, well, how can I start to increase? I definitely want there to be no baseline pain. I definitely want there to be no pain during exercise, and I'm okay with a little bit of pain and stiffness warming up, but we're talking more like a dull, achy type stiffness as opposed to a sharp specific pain. I never let anyone run with a sharp specific pain because I'm wary of that being a stress response on the continuum. So we've got a bit of pain, stress response and fracture. I'm wary of a stress response turning into a fracture, and once it's a fracture, you've got to be off feet, even on things like crutches. So once we know that it's in that happy cycle, we can then start to increase mathematically your load. So we might increase by the rule of 10%. So if you're running 8 kilometers one week, we'll increase by 800 meters next week. And it may be that we can make bigger jumps than that, but a 10% rule is quite nice, especially if you're not getting help from a professional. Once we can do that, we just keep increasing your load each week or every second week until your symptoms are still tolerating at the same level, and until we get you back to your desired level of exercise. And that is essentially the recipe for how I start to treat it. So how do I start to prevent it? The fourth thing, how do I start to prevent my shin splints? Well, we really need to make sure that we keep an idea of how hard you're training each week. This might be number of sessions per week that I'm doing. This might be number of kilometers of running a week that I'm doing with like a Garmin or some form of smart device. By having an idea about how much you're doing, we'll be able to know, well, hang on, I've just added a full new session, which means I added another 4 kilometers on my 10-kilometer week. I've increased my load by like 40%. So that's put me at risk. So we have an idea about how much load you're doing and changes in load. The next thing is, if you're someone that's more just starting out, then you need to have more incremental increases. So make sure that we're following something like the rule of 10%. But as I said, 10% is quite conservative. Sometimes it can be 20%, 25% of increases per week when you're starting out, because 20% increase of a kilometer is only 200 meters. So it really depends at where you are in your training, but just be mathematical with how you're increasing your load, because if you run into an issue, you can then go, oh, actually, I made a big jump there, I'm gonna back off. So the next thing is we still have to maintain some form of calf strengthening. I've treated triathletes, marathon runners, ultra athletes in the past, rugby players, footballers, people that use their legs a lot in their sport. Soleus raises, calf raises should be in your diet. Quad exercises need to be in your diet. If you're a runner, you still need to do these exercises. You can't get away with not strengthening up the muscles that you use on a daily basis for your sport. Finally, after all that, one of the most important things is that you look after your bone mineral density, you're eating well, and you're sleeping well. If you are not sleeping well, you are not recovering, and your bone is not remodeling, and you are not getting to where you need to go. So stress, fatigue, not eating well are 3 major factors. Women are 3 times more likely to get medial tibial stress syndrome than men, especially if they don't have their periods, and especially if they're not getting that hormonal response that they need from having their periods. It's very important that female athletes have periods in general, but especially in regards to bone health, because remember, this is a bone condition. So get your load right, get your capacity right, get your recovery as in your food and your sleep. For women especially, make sure that you're having your periods. And then that is definitely, in my opinion, the way that we manage 95% of all medial tibial stress syndrome or shin splints injuries. So guys, if you've enjoyed this video today, if you've taken something from it, please chuck me a cheeky like, maybe even a subscribe if you could, and I'll see you in another video. If you have any requests for more content, drop it in the comment, and I'll see you in another video. Thanks guys, bye.